Do you ever wonder what it really means to be human? That beyond the routines, the masks, and the daily hustle, there's a raw, messy, and beautiful reality unfolding right before our eyes. I'm Rick Watson, and this is Humaning, a podcast where I have honest conversations with everyday humans, and together we peel back the layers, dive into the chaos, and celebrate the magic of just being human. As you listen, notice how different parts of your story may appear in the story of others as we all just do our best to live, to feel, and to connect. Welcome to Humaning. Lucy Slater.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me.
So good to be here.
Welcome to the podcast.
So exciting, and I'm so proud of you and this new endeavour.
Thanks. You have had a role in it, haven't you?
I have had a role in
We
it.
kind of just came to that realisation before.
I did. I was reflecting on that this last week before this podcast. I thought, where did I actually meet Rick? And then I realised that we had had a conversation about podcasts several years ago.
Yeah.
Mm.
Let's pin that,
Okay.
because that's going to be our starting point. I like that story.
Mm-hmm.
There's the dog. Just as a check-in, we'll both check in before we start.
Yeah.
What's it like to be you right now, physically, mentally, emotionally?
Yeah, good question. I'm in a really good place, actually. Probably the best I've ever been, and I know that sounds contrite.
The best ever.
But I've actually worked really hard for that. So,
Yeah.
you know, I claim it fully because it has been something I have consciously worked on to be in a really good place. So I think physically I'm really well, healthy. Probably could do a little more exercise would be my one little note there.
Don't feel guilty because I'm here.
I'm not. I could do a little more movement for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, physically doing really well and emotionally the same. What was the other one? Mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally.
Thoughts, stories, beliefs.
Well, I mean, I feel like the brain is always something that I am navigating, the stories I tell myself, the beliefs that I have. So, you know, when you ask me how am I doing in that regard, well, you know, that's an ongoing journey for sure, because that's just how our brains are. So I think that I'm always working on better beliefs.
Yep.
And noticing what I'm thinking and replacing them. But it feels like I've got the most consciousness around my brain and what it's telling me than I ever have. So that's a very good thing.
Yeah. How are you feeling about coming on the podcast today?
Really excited. I feel really relaxed. I feel really excited.
Awesome.
I think that we always have amazing chats. So it'll just be the same thing.
Yeah, it's just a regular 3-hour coffee chat.
We usually go longer than what we'll probably do today.
Yeah. This is a short version of our
That's
coffee
right.
chat.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, how about you?
Before I go on to me, I just want to say that well fucking done.
Thank you.
I have a small glimpse of the work that's gone into you being you right now. So
Yeah.
well done.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
It's really cool. How am I? Physically, I'm probably a 6 out of 10. Yesterday I was a 2.
Yeah, wow.
Just got back from an overseas week away and it was amazing, and the jolt back to reality has not been amazing.
No.
But just the big contrast from sitting by the pool and relaxing and having freedom and time and all of those things to coming back to a red-eye flight and jumping straight back into work. And I noticed in my body headaches, tension in the head, and that's still a little bit there. That's why it's a 6 out of 10 rather than a 2 yesterday. Was pretty intense. So yeah, feeling that, and just feeling it probably rolls into the mental of there's some frustration around I wish it was different, coming back differently, like that contrast.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way that I could come back to the world and not be jolted physically, mentally, emotionally. Emotionally feel pretty good today. Had a pretty emotional day yesterday with all of that. So got to express and get some tears out yesterday. So that felt good. But yeah, I think I said to you when you walked in, like I nearly cancelled this podcast today. Just wasn't feeling it. But I woke up today and took the dog for a walk and feel good. So yeah, here we are.
So I guess noticing how you've moved through that quite quickly, like going from a 2 to a 6 today, you know, that's pretty cool that you were able to process that. And
we call that fucking progress.
We do. That's what I'm saying. Like, take a moment, because I know for myself, probably, you know, even 3 years ago, it would take me much longer than it does these days to move through something.
Yeah. So very lucky to have the support of an amazing human to navigate that with at the moment. So I feel really grateful for that. All right. Let's get back to that pin story around your version.
My version?
Of how we got to know each other or how we met.
Okay. So I guess we floated around a little bit. We're in a smaller community where we live, and I had a couple of interactions with you just casually, and then casually, does that sound?
I don't know. Could be sit sus.
It's not like that, people.
Let's clarify that casual interaction.
So I did come to an interview with you at the gym.
Yep.
That's the clarification.
Yes, thank you.
And actually, from my perspective, it was quite an amazing interview. Like, I hadn't really had, now that I think and reflect on it, I haven't really had an interview at a gym like that, which I know you would know is just you, right? This is why you've ended up where you are now. Like, the questions you were asking me were a normal gym person wouldn't have asked.
Yeah.
So that's our first kind of point of contact. And then I don't know how much time went past after that, but then you eventually came to me and started asking me about podcasts, because at the time I was working as an assistant to someone who was doing a podcast. And I was her assistant. So you just kind of messaged me out of the blue and said, hey, do you want to come for a cup of tea so we can talk about this thing? And we did. We had a cup of tea, and that's where the friendship started.
Yeah. And I actually think you talked me out of it.
Oh my God. Did I?
I was thinking about it today when I was
Why did I talk you out of it?
Oh, the conditions weren't right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was 2000. I think we worked out it was early 2019.
Yeah.
I was probably maybe 18 months post-surgery and recovering and all of that. So I was looking for something other than, I was doing a little bit of study to kind of engage with the world again. And I spoke about the idea of just having conversations with everyday humans. That was still the core of what I
liked the
do.
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the conditions just weren't right. Like there was a lot of work to be done physically, mentally, emotionally to get to a point where I felt like I could probably do this. And yeah, it's taken 5 years.
Yeah, but you're here, and I think that's so cool. It's a dream you've wanted for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reality of it has been really fucking fun. Like, it's just been really fun. It's a bit of a trip to think that I get just to have these conversations, and it's, you know, other people can listen to them as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, it's your passion. You love to have conversations with people. That's something I really notice about you.
Yeah. Yeah. So after that, we kind of just...
Well, what about your perspective?
Yeah, I remember the interview at the gym really well.
Yes.
Your husband, Chris, had been coming for a while.
Yeah.
And got to know him pretty well. And I think it was a similar scenario. The conditions weren't right for you for what it was and all the rest of it. So,
yeah.
But, yeah, thinking back to those interviews, I used to call them intros, and it was it was not so much like the practical side of fitness. It was like, why?
That's right.
Why is it important?
Mm.
What's going to mean in your life if this happens? And
Mm-hmm.
I still think that's a pretty important part of the whole.
You're already doing this work before you did it.
Yeah. It felt like that's why I wanted more, I guess.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Mm.
And then, yeah, we had that chat. And then I think after that, from that chat, while the podcast didn't grow, I think our friendship just grew.
Yeah.
And we just felt comfortable to drop into conversation really easily.
I think you had a major life change, and then we just started hanging out for coffees.
Yeah.
And talking about stuff that we wouldn't normally talk about with others, like just a little deeper in our convos, because that's something you and I both like. For sure.
That is a fair assumption.
It is a fair assumption.
We can drop in pretty quickly.
Yeah. And, there's different levels of friendship with different people, and that's totally cool. But that's one of the aspects of our friendship that I appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can be pretty honest pretty quickly, can't we?
Yes.
Yeah. It's nice to have friendships like that it's just okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's where we met.
Cool. So 2019, maybe the start of that, what was going on for you around that time?
So then, how many years are we talking? Like 5 years. So I would have started my really deep self work about 7 years ago. So I would have been 2 years into my journey of therapy and my 12-step program 5 years ago. So I guess there was a lot going on. 2 years in, I was definitely very fresh, and learning so much about myself and working through some gnarly stuff. I chose to become sober 7 years ago, so I would have been about 2 years into my sobriety journey then. And I always say to people, the first year is hardcore.
Yep.
And the second year is still pretty hardcore.
Yep.
So I was probably quite in the thick of that.
Yep.
And yeah, so I probably was still in quite a lot of emotional turmoil, I would say, to some degree.
What were the conditions that led you to make that decision?
Well,
I'm talking about the sobriety.
Sobriety?
Yeah.
It's like, my gosh, I look at it as a God moment, and I do use the God word. I know not everyone's into that word, so change that word to whatever you want. Higher power, universe, that's fine. I use the God word because I wasn't brought up religious, so I don't have that background. It was a spiritual moment. It was like something just came in, and it was really funny because it was my anniversary with my husband. And we were down in Byron having a night or two away for our anniversary. And we were out at dinner, and I remember I had this glass of champagne and I was drinking it, and I turned to him and I said, "This is my last glass of champagne." And I don't know where that came from.
I'd see your face change when you say that.
Yeah. It was a moment. And I feel myself even now getting a little emotional about that because it changed everything. It changed everything. So I was working with a therapist at the time who at that point in time was around 30 years sober himself. So he influenced me, of course. But at that point I hadn't entered into a 12-step program, but there was just something in me that said, this has got to stop.
What role did alcohol play in your life up till then?
I was a typical mum. I would have wine at the end of the day. I would sort of hang out. Like, the kids are in the bath now, so I'll have a wine.
Yep.
So it was never, at that point, it wasn't like I was getting legless drunk, but I was using it to soothe myself, or not even soothe, because alcohol's a lie, right? It you know, it is. It's like it lies to us. It says I'm going to fix everything and soothe it, but it doesn't. It actually just numbs and puts a little blanket over the top. So I was using that. I was using alcohol in that way. In my 20s, and I started when I was like 13.
Yep.
So my teens and my 20s, it was a different situation, and I definitely was binge drinking big time then.
Like the party drinking.
Yeah. But then when I became a mother, it was, that stopped, but it was still very prevalent in my life.
Yep.
And it really was exacerbating all of the patterns, particularly in my marriage and in my relationship, that were dysfunctional.
Is that a door you're happy to walk through? Some of those patterns?
You want me to talk about that now? Yeah. So at that point, I would say that, I had been with Chris. We had been together for quite a long time by then. So maybe, gosh, like, well, what are we now? We're 22 years together just recently. So
yeah, so probably 17.
Yeah. So
still
15 years together, is that right?
Yeah.
Am I doing the maths right? I'm not. It's not my strength.
Okay, either am I.
I'm a good therapist, but I'm not so good at maths. So we've been together a really long time, and it was like the patterns we had kind of used to get through to that point just were no longer working.
Yeah.
They just started to fall apart, and I feel that's because we had kids as well. Once you have kids, there's no hiding, right? Like, you got to step up to a new level of humanness and growth. And that really was where that started to show. And so we were kind of trapped in like conflict and getting really triggered. So our nervous systems were just
triggering each other.
Yeah. Yep. And also our kids triggering us, like
yep.
the kids. I think that's why it amplified it.
Yeah, right.
It was like
whole new dynamic.
Yep. And yeah, it was, I mean, as a therapist, I understand now we choose partners that have similarities to our parents, right? Yep. And I believe we do that. I look at that with a spiritual lens or a growth lens, that we choose that in order to have the calling to grow.
Yep.
And that is why Chris and I chose each other.
Mm-hmm. And
that is why it got a bit hectic for a while there, because we both had dysfunctional patterns we had from childhood, from what we learnt from our own parents, and they needed to be worked on.
Yeah. And so swinging back to the alcohol part, and I'm guessing then that the alcohol was a bit of a numbing from that as a first port of call, yeah?
That's right. So we would numb instead of dealing with it.
So going back to the Byron sitting at dinner table
that moment.
Anniversary, like, was there fear in that, or was there...
No.
Okay.
Which is why I call it a God moment.
Yeah.
It was like a knowing. And that knowing, was deep. And, but that being said, it was only the first step, and I knew that I needed help and that it wasn't going to be easy.
Yep.
So even though it was a knowing and it dropped in and I was like, this is my last drink. And genuinely it has been.
Yeah.
7 years later. Yeah.
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah. 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 So, I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. Grateful to yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. So grateful to myself, to my, my higher power, to, whatever led me to that growth edge, and the courage to step up and say, I'm going to do it differently, because I know that a lot of people don't, and that's okay. for them.
Yep.
But for me, I'm so grateful I heard the call and I stepped up.
Yeah, that's giving me goosebumps a little bit.
Yeah.
What was the first sort of 3 months of that look like?
First 3 months, I guess, you kind of are, it's kind of an amazing thing in the first little bit, because you suddenly have this monkey off your back.
Yeah. Bit of clarity even.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, wow, I don't need that thing that I thought I did. And there's freedom in that. And yeah, so the first 3 months were, you're kind of on a bit of a high with it.
Yep.
And then reality bites. Reality hits.
What did that look like?
That looks like going to gatherings that you'd usually go to and feeling really self-conscious, because you don't have a drink in your hand.
Yep.
That looks like having to feel feelings that you have not felt for possibly your whole life.
Yep.
It also looks like growth and a deepening of my experience. It looks like new relationships. It looks like, also death of other relationships.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
I lost a lot of people.
Yep.
In that beginning part, and that was painful at times.
It's nearly like a formation of a new identity for yourself, isn't it?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
It's a birth.
Yep.
Yeah, of a new person.
Yep. So if we come back to our original story, 2019.
Yeah.
You're 2 years into that process.
Yeah.
What does 2 years into it feel like? Like what's...
Definitely steadier ground.
Yep.
Feeling more confident when you are doing things. I mean, the growth just doesn't end once you're clear.
Yeah, you've stopped the numbing.
Yeah, it's like I'm 7 years into it, and versus 2 years, probably I had a lot more going on there because there was probably still a lot more to clear, but at the same time, I just continue to grow and expand because I have nothing stopping me.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you were 2 years in also into your study?
No, I wasn't by then.
Okay.
I started my study in 2020.
Okay.
So not quite into
studying?
my study yet. I study body psychotherapy or
Right.
somatic psychotherapy, some people know it as.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you give the elevator pitch for what that is?
This elevator pitch, it's so tricky. People ask me, what do you do? It's very experiential, so it can be tricky to explain it because people experience it differently.
Yeah, gotcha.
But essentially I work with people, just like myself, having patterns in my body, having feelings and things held in my body. I work with people who want to release that.
Yep.
And I do that in many different forms. I do it with breath work. I do it with cathartic releases or emotional releases, and also tremoring or vibration where the body spontaneously moves. Yep. And essentially the goal of my work is to get people back in touch with their core self.
Yep.
And remove defenses.
Yeah. What drew you to that form of psychotherapy? Well,
the man I spoke about earlier that was 30 years sober, who I was seeing as a therapist, was a body-centered therapist as well.
Okay.
And an acupuncturist. He would combine his sessions. They're amazing. And so working with him, and I found myself, so many of our sessions were around, what am I going to do with myself? What's my purpose? Like it kept coming up and I kept saying it. And he said to me, Lucy, you'd be an amazing therapist.
It's right in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, you would be an incredible therapist, and there's a really good school in Brisbane, which is where I studied, the Institute of Body Psychotherapy. And he had personal experience with it because his wife had studied there as well. So, and I trusted him.
Yep.
Because of the work that I had done with him.
Yeah, the lived experience of it.
I really trusted his ideas and his, what he was seeing in me, because to be honest, I couldn't really see it fully at the time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I trusted him.
Yeah.
And so I went along and I just joined it because of that.
So there's a little bit of leap of faith in there, isn't there?
100%.
Yeah.
I hadn't ever done that work before I started the course. I hadn't done that specific type of body psychotherapy that I now do when I joined the course.
Well, what did it feel like walking into your first day?
Oh, love at first sight.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's a bit of a lie. Actually, I was terrified.
Good deflection and good catch.
No, it was both. It was like, this is it. And, oh my God, what am I doing? What? You know that moment? Like, there's a joke Chris and I say it a lot. It's like, I've made a huge mistake. Like, there was part of me that was just like, what have I gotten myself in for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but I'm not really someone who shies away from
get out
a challenge, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was 2020.
That was 2020. So that was really full on because obviously that's the COVID year. So we had one module in person and then we had to go online.
And that's body psychotherapy. So it's like pretty practical.
Exactly. So Andrea, my teacher, did an incredible job. We used to work with clients on Zoom. It's not necessarily a no-go. We work with people on Zoom. It's still incredible.
Yep.
So we did it all on Zoom.
Yep.
But it was great to get back into in person, and we did.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm just picturing you walking into that first day. It's cool because it's like one of those parts of life where it's like I'm equally like fearful and excited at the same time.
Yeah, I was terrified.
And I think that combo is like it's a potent combo.
It is.
And many of us, including myself in the past, have pulled back because of the fear.
Yeah.
But the excitement's been there as well. And it's really interesting to like that combo, and there's some of the body feelings of those two things are really similar.
Yeah.
So it's hard to interpret which one's which.
Yeah, that growth edge,
Yeah.
Yeah, you mean like the energy of excitement and the energy of fear? Yeah, totally. Yes. Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about how many people misinterpret the energy of excitement as the energy of fear.
They do.
And like pull back.
That would be more ungrounded excitement though.
Right.
I would probably interpret that as possibly.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, it would be like there's excitement, but the excitement is like the body hasn't really learned how to contain it yet.
Yep.
So it's sort of like in the upper body, like you're feeling it in your chest and in your head, and it's like, oh my God, and I'm so excited that I can't sit still.
Yep.
Would be how I'd explain it.
And
so that's easy to misinterpret.
Contrast with grounded excitement. How would that look?
You feel it in your lower body.
Yep. You're
feeling it more in your legs and your lower body, and you're present, and you're just like, I'm really excited for this.
Solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that paints a good picture. Cool. So what was your experience of study like? Like that's a really ambiguous question. It's huge.
It is a big question.
If we go just back to that COVID time.
Yeah.
So you did the rest of 2020 online?
I think it was maybe we got to do one together at the end. It might have been the whole year, but most of it at least.
Yeah. And did you know in that first year, like, this is me?
Yeah. But I'd also made a commitment too, because to be honest, until that point, I had done so many courses.
Let's talk about this.
Was this a place you know?
Yeah. Like, I get attracted to lots of things.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in your version of this.
Oh, it was insane. Like, I'm a trained yoga teacher. I'm a Reiki master. I've done like a billion like energetic like courses, and so many things. I even went to uni for a while to, I was possibly going to do education, but uni's just not good for me.
Yep.
It didn't take me to a good place.
Yep.
It's too heady.
Yeah.
So many courses, and I now see that because my nervous system wasn't functional, like I was in fight flight and not able to really sustain my energy enough to complete something. Or I would complete it, but I wouldn't have the energy to sustain like a career in it.
Okay.
So when I entered the body psychotherapy course, I had a commitment. I was like, this is it. Like, no more. You're doing this.
Based on that past of...
Based on that past. Like, I was like, I am not doing another course that I don't end up using.
What was the story in there?
What was the story about me not finishing or not?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know if there was necessarily a story. I feel like it was just literally like I would start something and I just wouldn't be able to sustain it. It would be too exhausting, or I'd lose momentum or passion or something for it.
How did you feel about that part of you?
I was annoyed by it.
Yeah, can imagine.
I was annoyed by it because, I mean, just legitimately I want a purpose, right? Yeah. So I was like, come on, like, why? I've tried all these things and it's not happening. I want something. Purpose? Where's my fucking where's my thing?
Trying.
And I would get so annoyed. Like, I'd see people that just did things. Like, my husband's like that.
Yeah, he is.
He'd just do something and he'd just keep doing it. And I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? Like, why can't I do that? But I can now.
Yeah. So you proved yourself that.
Yeah. Well, I healed it. My teacher would probably call it ambivalence in my body. But I had a lot of ambivalence, and that was true. I had a lot of, like, should I, shouldn't I? Yes, right. Yes, no. Is this right? Is it, a lot of that.
Yep.
A lot of that has healed.
So 4 years. Yeah, it was 4 years.
It was, it's a 3-year course with a 4-year, you can do that as an option, which I took.
Yep.
So 4 years, and now I intern at the school, so I assist my teacher.
Yep.
And I also I'm the training coordinator of the school. So, it's kind of a cool story, right?
There's a little bit of education in there.
Yeah. And just for the girl that walked in never having done the work, and now I'm this involved in it.
What do you like about that part of it? Not the actual being a therapist, but the being in the education part of it.
Oh, being the intern with groups.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And workshops. It lights me up.
It's the shit, isn't it?
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's the energy, Rick. Like, having a room full of people who all want to grow and do processes to shift stuff is incredibly powerful. So I love that. I love supporting people through that. I love the big energy of it.
Yeah.
Love that.
It's cool. And how has that role helped your therapy, your practice?
Oh, immensely. It's I feel like I'm probably, it's deepened my work with people much quicker.
Yeah.
Because I've been allowed to see a bigger variety of people in different environments, and I'm doing that several times a year, and I'm watching my teacher and how she works with those people, and I am taking all of that in, and then that informs my work with people.
Yeah, and you get to create your flavour of it then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long have you been practicing for now?
2 years in July.
Cool.
Which, I said, actually it's funny, I met with my supervisor this morning, and I said to him, it feels so much longer than 2 years.
A lot happens in those 2 years.
I feel like it's been 5. I feel like I've been a therapist for like 5 years.
Yeah.
But it's, it trips me out that it's only been 2, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like it sounds like it's only been 2, but it also sounds like there's been years and years and years of building you.
Absolutely.
Like uncovering yourself.
Yeah.
To contribute to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think to say that 2 years is probably not a fair indication. Really,
probably not. 2 years being a therapist, but a lot longer working on myself. I would never have been able to walk into that room when I did without the work that I'd done on myself before that.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
One of the things that intrigues me about you, or
Yes.
maybe intrigue is not the right word, maybe inspire and intrigue, is the work you've done with codependency.
Yes.
I feel like codependency is a really interesting one because to me there's a bit of an elephant in the room. Like I feel like
It is
it's
such
really,
an elephant in the room.
really prevalent, and there's the dynamics of it really common. So I'd be super curious to hear some of your experience around.
Yeah, sure.
I guess like what led you to realize that this was a part, and then what you did to work with it, I guess.
Well, that was my original therapist I was speaking about, the man who was 30 years sober. He's originally who brought actually my husband first to 12-step fellowship in CODA, which is for codependency.
Okay.
And so, actually that's a bit of a funny story about that because he started before me and I was right into my spiritual bypass phase. And
which those two things kind of work out perfectly.
And he was doing this whole thing and I was like, oh, I'm fine. I've healed all of that.
Maybe.
And I was watching him because he was going to meetings and he was doing all these things. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something I need to look at. And that's what led me to start looking into codependency.
If you're open to it, what did codependency look like for you guys?
Control of the other person.
Okay. Usually
is like a very, very simple way to put it. And it's subtle. So often it can be tricky for people to really nail down. I've healed so much of this now, like 7 years into it. The patterns really have, most of them really have healed. I still get it happening if I'm stressed. I'll go back into that mode a bit. But overall, I've healed a lot of it. But back then it was like really looking at the other person's life. Like that for me was like, I'm always looking at my husband's life. What's he doing? Where is he? What's the next thing? And kind of pushing him to live his life as a way to not look at myself.
And that's that subtle control.
It's quite subtle.
Yeah.
And then, like sometimes control, like, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, that sort of stuff. There's a whole list of patterns you can look at.
And what impact did that have in your relationship?
Well, it blocks love.
So really,
do I really need to say much more than that?
That's a really powerful sentence, isn't it?
Yeah.
It blocks love.
Yeah. It blocks love. And it also blocks spiritual connection. So 12 Steps is a spiritual program. So yeah, that's where I first kind of experienced deeper spiritual relationship.
So when you say it blocks love, sorry.
No, that hit you, that one.
What does it blocking love look like? Like is that resentment? Is that
yes. It's resentments. And if you're trying to get someone to do what you want them to do and they're not, you get more and more resentful. Right? And that's more and more blocks to love. So, we talk a lot. It's like codependency is this thing where we want to have control and power over someone else in order to soothe the feelings that we've got inside of us. It's like if I can just control that person
Yeah.
and make them do what I want them to do, then I don't have to feel angry and sad. So if, you know, for example, you know, my husband's like, this is just a random example, he's working late every night.
Yep.
And when he works late every night, I feel really angry and sad. So therefore, I'm going to control him and make him come home early.
Yep.
This is a very, very simple example. In order to soothe those feelings of anger and sadness that I've got within me.
But I think the simple example is really good because this is an example of how common and how simple it can be.
It's an epidemic.
Yeah.
It honestly, and also today's society applauds it. Like love songs, movies. It's all codependency.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot.
And then my experience of that is the resentment just gathers layers. And then it turns into like a plaque.
Is it something you relate to?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
I've definitely had my version in my previous marriage.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And probably going both ways.
Trying to please all the time?
Yeah, trying to please, trying to change. Like I was probably more in the pleasing part.
Yeah.
And then there was probably a finger of blame if the reaction wasn't what I searched for.
Yeah.
So it was that loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an interesting one.
Yeah, it's a huge one. So many people have it, you know, but the freedom that comes from when you realize that you're powerless over another person is immense.
Yeah, that's huge. That idea of responsibility for someone else's emotions, it's massive. There's so many behaviors that are associated to that.
Yeah. And often people with codependent traits are overly responsible.
Yeah.
So they're actually, or they're enabling, you know, they might be enabling someone in their life who has really shitty behaviors.
Yeah, yeah.
They're kind of letting it slide and like pleasing and giving and doing all this stuff. And in you know, they're really just enabling the other person to just continue behaving how they want.
Yeah. Is there a healthy version of codependency?
That's called interdependence.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it's a different name, isn't it?
Yeah, that's called interdependence. So, and the thing that sometimes people get a bit miffed about when you talk about codependency, they're like, oh my God, but I really care about people. It's not about that. It's, you know, when you start recovering from codependent traits and patterns, it's not that you don't care about other people. I care deeply about other people, but I don't put their needs above my own. And I look at the intention that I have behind my care. If the intention is to control someone with my care, that's a very different thing to just genuinely caring.
If we had video, you'd see that I'm smiling profusely.
Why are you smiling, Rick?
That whole piece around intention is huge. If we can develop the capacity and the awareness to even just stop and think about what our intention is, even retrospectively, it's powerful shit.
Yeah.
You know, am I getting my needs met sneakily, or am I actually, you know, trying to meet the needs of someone else?
Am I doing this thing because I want to manipulate the other person to get them to do something for me?
The little covert contracts that pop up unconsciously. Yeah, super interesting.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So what's been the impact in your relationship by going through this process and both you and Chris having an awareness around your patterns with it?
Oh my gosh, it's like it is revolutionary. You know, we celebrated 22 years together last week, I think it was.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Which is huge. But the amazing part about it is that it gets better. Like the relationship deepens and it gets better. And that's the impact that has been created from doing all the self-work we do.
Yeah. The layers of plaque are not there of resentment.
Exactly. And we actively work on our stuff and we work on connection and keeping our hearts open. You know, we both see a body psychotherapist and we both are always working on ourselves. And I mean, in terms of the codependent thing, like I'm my own person now.
Yeah.
And 7 years ago, I wasn't. I was Chris's wife.
Yep. I have this picture in my head with that of like the scales of honoring self versus honoring other.
Yeah.
And how are the scales balanced? It sounds like your scales are at least balanced, if not even a little bit more into honoring self.
Yeah. I think at the moment I'm in this really incredible phase of my career where I'm just loving it.
Yep.
And I'm really focused on it. And I've realized my lesson, I had a really beautiful insight for myself. I just ran a workshop last weekend on the Saturday, and it was the first one I've run on my own. I've helped a lot on many, but this was my own one. And, you know, afterwards, I really had this realization that for the first time, I am using my own ambition, because I've got a lot of it. I'm using my own ambition and my own drive for myself. I've done a lot of that for other people, helped other people build their businesses, you know, all sorts of other stuff. But this is the first time in my life where I'm using it just for myself.
What did it feel like to have that realization?
It felt amazing. Felt really healthy. Felt really healthy and really, really exciting, like limitless. I can keep going with this.
Yeah, that deserves some silence, Nelly. It's beautiful, you know.
Thanks,
I think
Rick.
it is the collection of all the work.
Yeah.
And I often speak to people around acceptance, around who they are and what they are. And it's, to me, that's a pure example of this is me and I'm doing this for me. And yes, I'm helping people as I go, but I'm not, there's no sneaky intention behind this.
No.
And that's to me, that's like pure acceptance. Like, this is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feels really real.
How was the feedback?
For the workshop?
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say bad on here.
No.
But it was really good.
I had a friend that went, so.
Did you?
Inside running.
Oh, did you have a little inside comment?
I haven't spoken to her yet.
Okay.
I'll get an update.
You get an update.
Yeah.
Get an update.
I'm sure it'll be great.
Went really well and everyone loved it. And there'll be more.
Because it was a grounding workshop, is that right?
It was nervous system reset.
Right, that's it.
And it was a 4-hour workshop. So participants learn about their own nervous systems and, you know, what goes on for them.
Yep.
And then I did a big lot of like grounding, breath work and tremoring at the end to really deeply reset people's nervous systems.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I work a lot with that. It's a lot of my job is helping people regulate. Making
that the priority.
It needs to be in the early stages of the work.
Yeah.
Usually.
What's behind that, or why is it so important initially?
Because people need to have containment and grounding before they can go into the bigger emotional work. Otherwise, it's not safe.
Yep. Set the field conditions.
And the person needs to feel safe in their body in order to be able to, and it just makes the work better and deeper because the person's like, I'm in my legs, I'm grounded, I'm here, I'm in the present, I can let stuff out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's hard when if you're in like an activated state or if you're in a collapsed state, either of those two forms make it hard to move forward in any way.
Well, you're not really in reality.
No. So I really like that's the starting point. And I'm slowly seeing more of that rather than what have I got to do to fix it? It's like, let's just take a few steps back. And
yeah, it's life-changing for people, nervous system work, and was for me too. I made a comment when I did my course to the teacher's assistant, and I said to her, I think it was at the end, I remember saying to her, I didn't expect that being able to contain my feelings was going to be a huge part of this course.
Yeah, right.
I didn't expect
being able to contain my feelings.
Yeah, because before body psych, my feelings, you know, they could be too much
for
my body. too much. Like they'd just come out. It'd just be coming out. And there was like intensity, a whole lot of I have a certain level of intensity. But it was like my feelings had that intensity and they were just coming out, and it was too much for me, and I couldn't.
I'm sure it was too much for everyone else as well.
Yeah, I bet it was. Anyway, don't know any of those people anymore, so except for good old hubby. He's still sticking in there. So a lot of the healing for me was containment, like being able to contain my feelings, soothe myself, not look for someone else to soothe me. And
then do the work.
Yeah, and then that allows me to express things really deeply and move them.
Because the difference in there, the subtle one, is like the containment is not pushing away or suppressing. No,
that's different.
Yeah.
It's not suppressing.
Yeah.
It's containment. It's like I have a safe body now in order to be able to feel and process my emotions. So if I cry now, for example, I would just cry and move on. Like it's not this big, oh my God, I'm crying and it's terrible and everything's falling apart and something's really wrong. It's like I'm just crying and expressing myself, and now I'm good.
And that sounds like what you were talking about before in some capacity around the different grounded, ungrounded levels of excitement.
Yeah.
Is that, linking it back into just that grounded excitement?
Yeah, it's like it's an embodied experience of like I said before, that almost like you feel the excitement in your belly instead of your head.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I still have moments where I think to myself, you don't get excited like you used to. Like almost like I have this, like, is there something like wrong?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you get it? But actually it wasn't.
Is that an ungrounded excitement?
It was an unhealthy excitement.
Yeah.
It was like an anxious excitement that I used to have.
Yep.
Now I get excited. It's just like, it's more like a spark. Like I'm excited for that.
Subtleties of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's having that new experience of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
How about you? How do you experience excitement?
Yeah, there's been some changes. I think probably the last 2 years, it's been more middle ground than the high highs and the low lows.
Yeah.
And I think in the past I'd get carried away nearly in like a fantasy excitement of like, oh, this could be so fucking amazing. And I'd get lost in the fantasy. And I think that's what you're talking about, being heady.
It's interesting as you talk like about that, I feel myself going up to my head.
So in the past, like if I started this podcast, say 5 years ago when we spoke,
yes,
I would fantasize about, it's going to be this thing and then that's going to happen. I'd get so excited about the thing that could potentially happen from the thing that never actually started.
Yeah.
Whereas this experience of the podcast is like, I actually am completely open to whatever the fuck happens with this podcast.
Yeah.
If it's just my mum that listens, awesome. Hi, mum.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, mum.
But if there's other people that get something from it, great.
Yeah.
So that's probably the difference from now and 5 years ago.
Yeah, you're in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. The gap between my reality and maybe the fantasy or the perception has really closed. And to me, in my language, that's an acceptance. I accept this reality. I accept who I am. I accept these parts of me. I accept that I'm not getting crazy excited about this podcast, but it's fun.
Yeah. You're following that.
Yeah.
Without expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the big piece. Is
100%.
That, it's not conditional. It's probably as close to unconditional as it can get. Because I don't care.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it's not that I don't care.
No,
but I don't care about the outcome.
It's not. There's no attachments, but you care.
Yeah, I care that we have good conversations and it's a good product to put out because
Yep.
I want people to get value from hearing other people's stories. That's
Yes.
like the bit that I care about.
But it's not about being some big person who everyone listens to.
No.
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 Thank God. I mean,
Yeah.
who wants that pressure?
Well, it's just not me.
No.
I've learned that it's just not me.
It's not you. Yeah.
It is an interesting conversation because that's probably the thing I've learned in the last 12 months around business is like I've spent a lot of time trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be. And this year has really been the opposite of that. Right from the start, it's like, I'm not doing fucking social media. I'm not doing this.
I remember you saying that.
So it's more about what I don't want to do to really be aligned with who I am rather than forcing myself to do shit that I don't like and I'm uncomfortable about and it's not congruent. So this year's been like full permission.
So good.
Yeah.
And no one's wanting you to do anything that doesn't align with you.
No, but I thought they were. Because I'm delirious.
Because you're delirious?
No, it's just...
Because were you doing that to yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just stemmed from, the whole fitting in, striving, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That was just how it showed up in business. There's a way to do business and I've got to do the way.
Yeah.
Rather than what's my way.
It's not like that anymore though.
No.
Business, it's changed so much.
Yeah. Like, look at us sitting on the couch in my little
chilling
office.
out, just doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bloody fun.
I think we had that conversation recently about social media and, for me, I even had a shift around it, which was a little bit similar where I was like, what is this whole thing people have around views? Like I've got to have thousands of people, viewing my post.
Good question.
And, I had this moment, like this big shift, and I was like, why would I want that? Like, I mean, great if it happens, like you say, no attachment. Great if it happens. But before social media, I would have talked to maybe 20 people about it. Now, so what if it only reaches 20 people? It's the same thing. Like, just chill out.
Yeah.
So I do.
Yeah.
I just put videos out and I relax.
The thing I like about your videos, and I've got a little bit of backstory to them, but I remember you telling me that you just do it when you feel it.
I just do it when I feel it.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's not like that I've got a post at 6 o'clock every Friday. No. It's none of that shit.
I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But that's living a body-centered life.
Yeah.
That's being in your body and being in your heart. And, I genuinely feel a connection now to putting videos out.
Yeah. That's flipped for you, don't you?
Yeah.
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 Cool.
It's a way to connect.
Yeah, definitely. Even this podcast has allowed me to...
It's your way.
Green light that my way to, because I'm much more about these conversations where it's not just me telling someone what to do.
Yeah. Do you struggle to tell people what to do?
I like questions more than statements.
I know you do. I have noticed that.
Part of that is because I did have some rescuer in me.
Yeah.
And the rescuer was really statement based. And I would get my needs met by being necessary.
You mean when you would rescue, you would make statements, you've got to do this, you've got to do that?
This. Yeah. And I think it just was a natural flow of the industry. I was in the fitness industry. So it was
of course.
These are the things. To get that, you've got to do that, that, and that.
Yeah.
And I'll show you how to do it. So it was like, I was drawn to that for a reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably one of the big flips in the last 3 or 4 years has just been learning the power of questions.
Yeah.
And how they can dissolve my little unconscious need to rescue.
Mm.
And then what that does, for me, it gives people their power back because in some capacity I was taking it away. And you should do this. Like, well, what do you think you should do?
Yeah.
So it's kind of as simple as that for me. So that's why I prefer the questions.
It's more powerful for the person.
And there's a time for statements.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, I like the energy of a question.
I think a lot of men could relate to that rescuer place.
Yeah. And it gets a bit fuzzy because there's, as a dad, you've got to, step up and lead and direct and help. And so there's roles in life where it's super necessary. And then there's even raising kids. It's like, my boy's 15 now. So
oh my God.
he doesn't need
No.
too much guidance and rescuing and direction. It's just like, what do you want to do?
Do you feel a loss of identity?
Nah, I'm proud because it's just the evolution of our relationship.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really nice and he's evolving into his own man. And,
Yeah.
it's really cool to witness it, and we can have question-based conversations rather than statement-based ones. You know,
that's great. He's really, you're a really great dad.
Oh, it's hard to receive that, but I'm really happy to receive it, because one of the core reasons I've been doing so much work on myself is because of that.
But that's what makes you a great dad,
I
Rick.
want to be a great dad.
Yeah.
You know, so it's funny to receive that, but it's also, there's a validation there in some capacity, because it is one of probably my core role in life. Like, he's my North Star.
Oh, I relate to that.
Yeah. Hey, Finny.
Does he listen?
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's really lucky to have you.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful relationship. So it's really nice. Making me emotional, Lucy.
That's my job.
Damn it, it's my job.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I feel like it's probably a pretty nice place to
cool.
To bring things to a close for today.
Sure.
I mentioned this a lot on this podcast, but the goal is to continue the conversations.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not the end point.
Nope.
The other goal with this podcast is not to sell shit.
Yeah.
I always put a link in the show notes, so if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they can do it that way.
Awesome. Yeah. Easy.
But yeah, it's more humaning than selling.
Totally fine with that. I'm not into selling either.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for the chat. It was really amazing.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really cool.
I like the part of it where we don't really know what's going to emerge.
Yeah. That's what keeps it interesting, right?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome.